Eric and I met on a social media group. Thank you.
The big thing is he was living in Virginia at the time, and I was here in Utah. So, I guess we'll just stay friends.
Me and my 4 kids decided we were gonna up and move out to Utah, and at a good.
For me.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. TLC debuted a brand new series this week called The Blended Bunch, which is about a couple, Erica and Spencer Shemwell. The two of them are widowers, and they found second chances with each other after both tragically losing their spouses after being married for both of them for 10 years. Erica's the mother of 7, and Spencer is the father of 4. One of my eagle-eyed followers or subscribers actually sent me a message, and they said that there's a clip in the episode where Spencer had made a comment that he married Amy and then subsequently had a baby 9 months later. And then they said, but the blog says something totally different.
And decided to get married. 9 months later, we had our first, Brayden. She was an amazing mom.
Well, obviously me liking to figure out like inconsistencies or maybe half-truths that networks spin, I took a dive into the blog that Erica Shemwell has crafted as a part of her social media presence called the Shemwell Bunch. By piecing together the different pages and stories of the various people, it doesn't seem like that was actually truthful. But that's not the only thing that I think is kind of weird about this family. We're gonna get into all of that, but before we do me a favor and give this video a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and for sure leave me some comments about your thoughts. Also, you can join them by clicking down here if you'd like to support the channel. If you are an inquisitive person like me, you don't take things at face value. You want to always believe the fairy tale that these reality television shows show you. You're like, oh, it's such a sweet story. Mom and dad met and everything is hunky-dory and the kids are all living together and it's great. Then you see the first episode and you see a brother that's really, really skeptical, and you're kind of like, why is the brother so weirded out by Spencer? And then you start to realize there's things that we don't know as viewers about this family, and there's probably details that are making the brother not trust Spencer. And the brother specifically said in the very first episode, how do you know that he didn't move here because he needed a babysitter for his kids? Basically is insinuating that after Spencer lost his wife, he abruptly upped and moved to Utah. Now, the way that they tell the story on the show is that they both met online, and sort of the timelines, it's all kind of a mess. And now I totally understand why her brother is skeptical of Spencer. So here's how it all plays out. Erica's story is consistent. Her husband has cancer, he passes away, and they have 7 kids together. Spencer's story on the show was that he married Amy, and 9 months later they had their first son. But on the blog, which Erica updated on her own, she says this: late into their teen years, Amy and Spencer started dating and then married in December of 2007. With family being so much of Amy's core beliefs, that she seamlessly fell into motherhood when she and Spencer had their first child, Brayden, in June of 2008. Everyone who knew Amy described her as a woman born to be a mother. So if you do the math, that means she had Brayden 6 months after the baby, now after their wedding, meaning she was likely pregnant with Brayden when they were married. This might be a detail that they just don't want to include on the show. There's been no discussion that Brayden was a premature baby. It was basically just like she had the baby, and he made it sound like on the show, we got married and 9 months later we had the baby. And Erica's saying they got married in December and then she had the baby in June. So obviously, being religious, being Mormon, having a relationship where you're being physical out of wedlock is not, is against the rules. Basically, it's, You know, you're not supposed to be engaging in premarital funky times. And so it doesn't surprise me that when Amy became pregnant, they wed, because that's just what a lot of these, you know, that's just what happens with these, in these religious groups. Like, if you have a belief that you're not supposed to have it until you're married, but then you get pregnant, then the right thing to do would be to get married. And then, you know, it's right in the eyes of God, because then when you're married, the baby's born, and the baby is born to a married couple. That's not a huge fib. It's not even that big of a deal. It's just weird that they would just make it seem like, oh, just 9 months later. Okay. So that was the first cue. And I was like, okay, that's weird. But then it also says that he moved to her. So they met when they were 12 through some like camps and stuff. And then when he got to 18, he moved to the state where she was, and they got quickly married shortly after that, which is a pattern because he did the same thing with Erica. So this is where it gets weird. So in November of 2017, his story on the show is that...
I remember driving down the road, and what I remember after that is waking up in a helicopter. You were involved in a car accident, and your wife passed away at the scene.
And it was just a regular day. They cuddled, they had fun, they went out to dinner with the family. And then as they were driving home, he says the last thing that he remembers is that he woke up and he was being life flighted, and the paramedic let him know that Amy had passed at the scene. She was pregnant, and that he and his 4 children were all being taken to different hospitals. And so that was sort of the story that they said, like, it was this tragic accident. She passes away, and that was it. Well, I did a quick Google search just to find out, like, typically if there's a traffic fatality, you'll be able to find some sort of thing, the news, because obviously if it involves kids and a death, they're usually always newsworthy. And so from the local newspaper, it says this: the tractor trailer driver, and it gives the name, was transported to Warren Medical Hospital, and they say Sergeant Taylor said that all the passengers in the Yukon were properly restrained. Tyler said that an investigation by the trooper, KJ Orr, determined that the traffic signal for the southbound Yukon was red when it made the left turn, and the northbound traffic in which the tractor trailer was traveling had a green light. Warren County Sheriff's Office and Warren County Fire and Rescue assisted Trooper Orr at the scene, while the Virginia Department of Transportation assisted with traffic control. And they say that basically it was determined that he ran a red light by turning left on a red light, and then as a result of turning on a red light, they were hit by a tractor trailer, and it hit on Amy's side and collided with her. T-boning a pickup truck means you go like in the middle and it kind of wraps around it. So him running the red light is ultimately what caused it. There wasn't any charges filed that I could find for this, but they started a GoFundMe after the news happens of her wife, and they raised like $41,000. So this happens in November of 2017. His wife passes, they start a GoFundMe, and then a month later, he's uploading like a video with his church talking about like grieving and like what you would, like the advice you would give to someone who's grieving, or advice to someone that's going through loss.
And as we were on our way out from ice cream, we had gotten hit by a tractor trailer on the way to pick something up from the grocery store.
And it's sort of like this way to kind of promote the church. It's really bizarre. And I guess like maybe they're just trying to use the story for this, but the way it was structured was that like he had been grieving for a year and she had been grieving for 2. And so this wasn't like a rushed thing, but she passes, the accident happens in November. She says that they meet and they online through boards, and she said she never thought that they would meet in person because it wasn't that big of a, like, because he lived in Virginia and she lived in Utah. November is when the accident happens. He is moved to Utah by June of 2018. And on their blog it says this: Spencer and his kids moved to Utah in the summer of 2018. He worked towards obtaining his general contractor's license in construction and remodeling, continuing his own business just as he did in Virginia. Spencer and Erica were already friends at the time. They met on a social media support group for widows and widowers of their faith. Once he moved to Utah, they often got together for play dates with all of their kids. When Erica finally realized how amazing Spencer would be as a husband and family figure and father figure, they started dating and quickly were engaged in December of 2018. 6 weeks, they were married in January of 2019. So if you want to do the math, he is moving his kids across the country within 6 months or so of their mom passing away. So he uproots his kids from all of their lives, from their family, from their friends, from their schools, puts them into Utah, and he moves to be with her, which is kind of like what he did with Amy, it sounds like. He met Amy, really liked her, moved to her, and then they get married really fast. And then he goes there, and he admits on the show that he moved there to go to her. And once there, they're friends, but they don't start dating until December of 2018, meaning they started talking. And then she says that they had been friends for a year before they actually, they had been friends for about a year by the time they got married. So that means, and she said this in another post, when asking questions, because they're getting a lot of negative feedback, she went on to Instagram and said, I'm going to answer some questions and I'm going to put a blog post up. So people were really confused about the timeline. And people were concerned about the kids, obviously, because it seems like the kids are not happy. It also seems like the kids are really struggling. And now this might be why, because it seems like once Amy passed away, he immediately jumps into something with Erica immediately, and then moves the kids across the country to Utah. They get married almost 1 year. They get engaged 1 year, 1 month after their mom passes away, and they're living with Erica in January. So 14 months after their mom passes, they're already living with a new mommy. And this is why I think some of the kids are struggling with grief, because they haven't had the time to process it. But this is what she said about their relationship in their blog. When Spencer and I were just friends, we both felt so much hope added to our lives, feeling that we weren't alone in journey. I can honestly say that this is the same for all of our kids. After Tony died, I found an incredible network of other parents who had lost their spouses. We would get together with our children, and it would amaze me to see the immediate and long-lasting difference it made for our kids to have friends who had been in their shoes. It gave them a sense of belonging and normalcy. It gave them dear, close friendships, and it helped them to understand that happiness can be found even after tragedy. Spencer and I were friends for almost a year before we were engaged. So she's saying we were friends for almost a year. So he immediately must have met her after Amy passes away. So this is a rebound, and it's a trauma rebound, which again, trauma bonding is really detrimental, because it's only good as when you're in the middle of grief, you do things that are completely out of character. You are not always thinking clearly. And here's what she says. Spencer and I were friends for almost a year before we were engaged. We spent countless times getting the kids together for play dates. They became such good friends because of the sincere and deep connection they found in each other, and those connections have proved to be powerful in healing their hearts, and it continues to be so as we move in more experiences together as a family. They were married 14 months after Amy passes away. That's pretty incredible. And no wonder the kids are still crying about missing mommy and daddy. No wonder they're crying about, their entire lives were really flipped upside down. And if you're not getting them proper therapy, and if you're not doing family therapy or something, there's going to be chaos created. And then they have to trust this new woman who is a stranger to them. She says that her kids are in counseling and or therapy from the losses we've endured. Yes, individual therapy, clinical evaluations, multiple books, and read articles and studied of grief group counseling, and some of those things that have been so helpful and continue to be helpful to our kids and us parents. Being able to talk out loud about our pains, joys, and struggles, wins, and worries with someone has been one of the most beneficial ways we continue healing from our losses. They are all still very much in the healing phase, and in the mix of that healing and grief, they've also created a messy place for their kids. And I'm not one to say you're making a mistake by doing this. But it feels, this is why I think her brother is skeptical of Spencer, because not within months of their passing, he's moving across the country for another woman. He's then there. Maybe he's feeling desperate and he really likes him. And maybe they do have a wonderful relationship, but they barely know each other because they have so many kids. I mean, how much time can you actually spend together when you have 11 children between the two of you? You're constantly being pulled in different directions. So that might explain why her brother is like apprehensive, why he doesn't want them to adopt, why he doesn't want them to adopt kids already, because they haven't really, like, this went at warp speed. And I think just as much as the kids are having a hard time adapting, I think her family is having a hard time adapting, which might be why the parents were reluctant to say, hey, yeah, it's cool, call us grandma and grandpa. Maybe in a way, some of the family members aren't sure if this is even going to last. And the interesting thing here is that this family was promoting their Brady Bunch thing in May of 2019. So I found an article on Fox News, and the title of the article was "The Real Life Brady Bunch is a Story of Faith and Second Chances." In the article, it's an opinion article, and it says the Real Life Brady Bunch is a story of faith and second chances. And it's going through the story of basically saying, she lost Tony. She actually was pregnant while Tony was fighting for his life. So the last child that she had with Tony actually was born the same month that he passed away. And then they say that, it was on November 13th, 2017 that Amy passes away. He says 1 month later, the grieving single parents met in an online support group. Later, they met face-to-face at a conference in Utah. So he met her in December of 2017. And she says, it wasn't long after I got home that I felt a strong prompting from Heavenly Father that I needed to move my family to Utah. Never one in doubt of heaven, he packed up and headed west. The relationship moved slowly, really like a friendship. And this is what they said about their marriage at the time. This marriage came with challenges, but having a partner is so important. I almost get teary at the end of the day that we get to do this together. We know Heavenly Father will provide what we need and it will be a fun journey. And it's the one they hope will bless others. He said, if I could share one thing with the world, it would be that life is so full of trials and struggles, and we all have to face. Our situations may seem unique, but it's not. The reality is we have all tested and tried. If we push forward in faith and know that it's the part of Heavenly Father's plan, He will bless us. We've seen it. Blessings are in store for being faithful. God made him move to Utah is what I'm basically getting out of this. God made him move to Utah after meeting her. Weird. The weird thing in all of this is that their Mormon faith is brought up, but again, it's sort of like you don't see it as a part of the show at all. I mean, great if they want to share their story, but again, this concerns me because you literally just lost your wife like 14, 15 months ago at this point. You're talking to Fox News and you're acting like this marriage, which is, by the way, very brand new. They had at this point been in a relationship 5 months and they're already promoting it as the real life Brady Bunch. So the minute they get married, they start promoting their family as the real life Brady Bunch, like this was their life's mission to become famous. And I wonder what this is going to do to the kids. I wonder how this is going to play out. And I'm sure TLC was like, oh, this is great. It's so heartwarming. And they don't care if they exploit children. How do people not see, like, this is so irrational? Am I the only one here? If I'm the only one here, please tell me. Because as I've dug further into this rabbit hole, I'm just confused. So anyway, God told him to move and become her husband, told him to move to Utah only a few months after his wife died. And now they're on TLC like 2 years after getting married. What do you think about all of this? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.